a separate issue. The Bob Gray discussion and report is a separate issue from how you want to handle performance evaluation. So in other words, you requested back in December that we create a process. So what the purpose of this meeting, I thought, was to discuss that process. So in other words, we spoke about it, I believe, in the October or November voting board meeting. And it was introduced at that time that I would send out a blank performance evaluation, which I did, a form, and then everyone would fill that form out. It would go to the chair, and then the chair would sort of tally up and do like a synopsis, a summary of the report of the evaluations. And then it would be the chair's responsibility to sit down with the executive director to go over the findings. And then at a public meeting, if there was any salary adjustment to be made, that for any staff, for me or any of my staff, then that would have to be brought forward to the board for a vote.
So should we in fact have step 4 after step 5, the Bob Gray report?
I don't know, because to me, Bob Gray, it's my understanding from Bob Gray that he was not asked to grade performance or look at the job people are doing. He was to interview each of us and find out what all it was we were doing based on our job descriptions. And so that's why I supplied him with our job descriptions initially, and then he did the interviews. So I think that
step 4 is just process without a review relative to Bob Gray's report. Totally understand.
Correct. Okay. Yes, I see what you mean. Yes.
All right, so let me call the meeting to order.
Okay.
Welcome to the workshop of the Captiva Erosion Prevention District on this Thursday, January 6th at 1 p.m. This workshop will now come to order. Administrative Director, please call the roll.
Chairman Sylvia,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Bill. Aye. Treasurer Pyle. Not here.
Okay, we will now open the floor for public comments. There is a limit of 3 minutes for each citizen. Please remember to state your name for the record. Chair, me. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I don't think we have any public.
Okay, so this is, all right, so I will close the public comments. Okay, so we need a clear process for performance review at the CEPD. These are some steps that should be taken. Supervisors of direct staff will review their own staff. Effectively, to me, that means Jennifer reviews her staff. Is that correct? Is that the effective statement? Okay. And then CEPD commissioners will be responsible for reviewing the executive director, which is Jennifer. And then salary adjustments will be brought to the Board of Commissioners for approval with justification to be discussed during a workshop.
And also, if I may add, I apologize, Chairman, if I may add, you also might, CEPD commissioners may also want to review the employment contracts of other positions that directly report to them, such as our attorney. So I don't know if we've ever done an evaluation of our attorney. I know he's a contract employee or evaluated his contract, but you may want to add that into your process, because as we grow, you know, these positions that we have contracts like the CPA, like the attorney, the commissioners may also want an opportunity to review that performance as well.
So let me ask a two-part question here. You said the Board of Commissioners for approval within a workshop. Is that possible for us to vote for something and approve something outside of a regular board meeting? Is that
No.
correct? No.
No, you cannot vote and approve. The purpose of workshops are to go through issues and items so that by the time it gets to the voting board meeting, you all have all the information to make your decision and your vote.
So basically, can we modify that word approval?
Absolutely. You can, this is all new. So you don't have an SOP on this.
And why don't you think of a new word to put in there so that it recognizes that we can't really vote? Renee, I got a question. Since you have a long term here, were you around when we hired the attorney and the CPA? And do you remember any context of hiring those people and what we expected of them?
No, but I thought it was very good to hire Ralph because we've had interaction with him in the panel, and because he's easygoing and he's smart and he's kind of reflects the sort of culture of the CEPD, I thought it was a good fit.
Okay, but you said panel, so that's the community panel?
Yes.
Okay, and what about the CPA? What's his group?
I have no clue, but Mike Mullins said that he highly ranked them and highly rated them as far as someone to use. And according to Commissioner Pyle, there are certain ways that there has to be a government style of accounting, which, since you and I are both in financial sectors, and that's how we bring bread to the table at the end of the day, I find a lot of them bureaucratic, redundant, and expensive to the taxpayers. But apparently, it has to be done that way. Now, I have not rolled up my sleeves to find out if it's really true, if it has to be done that way, because again, you as a businessman, just because someone else says it so, doesn't make it so.
Well, I can
So
tell
with that
you,
being said, and they're gonna fight for bureaucracy because that's more time means more billing. But, are they good? Are they adequate? Well, I don't know. I haven't done a dive on it. As far as you know, in your business now, it's changed. What used to be salespeople is now half the offices at Wells Fargo are now 70%, 60% compliance. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so you understand where I'm coming from.
So
I don't know. Big, I don't know, but
is it appropriate for us to reach out to Mullins and find out, is there any documentation, et cetera, of what we expected from these people?
that's a very good question.
we do, let me answer that for you, Chairman. We do have a proposal that was done prior to me. And it's a pretty solid proposal. I mean, working in government in my other life, this CPA firm that we're working with and the individual, Jason Smith, he's excellent. Very, very knowledgeable and on the ball. Our audit was so simple because he was so ahead of the game, even from when I first arrived here. But I will say I do have a proposal that kind of outlines everything that they're doing for us and they're supposed to be doing for us. So, and then it's going to change because, as you know, we just pulled out payroll and payroll is now being done in-house. So I'm going to get a new proposal this month. So what I could do is, obviously, when I get the new proposal, I'll share it with everyone. And then if you want, we could in the future look at maybe basing an evaluation off that proposal.
Question.
No, please.
Yeah, so when you say payroll, what do you mean in-house? Usually payroll is done by a payroll company. You just submit the hours.
Correct. That's what we're doing, because prior to me and prior, we had contracted that out to the CPA firm.
Okay.
I gotta ask.
Yeah, please.
So what did they charge us just to add up the hours?
I believe we'll be having a savings of about $300 a month.
Well, excuse me. See, this is my red flags going crazy. How long does it take for anybody, James, to find out how many hours everyone worked that 2-week time period of the 7 people? I mean, I have a company with 20 people and it takes my girl an hour and a half.
Yeah,
So how are we saving $300? Because, what you're saying is the accounting firm charges us $300. I rest my case about the redundancy of the bureau.
and now we're taking that out, so we'll be saving that money because we're giving it to Lindsay. And to answer your question, it takes her a lot less than an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And then also, one of the things that she and Daniel implemented, where we have our parking lot and offsite employees logging into ADP when they start working. So there's an actual electronic log so that there's no question regarding validity of hours.
Yeah, so no, I misunderstood your statement because you said we're saving. I asked, what does the accounting firm charge? And you said we're saving $300. I should have backdoored that equation.
So do we have and historical proposal with respect to the attorney?
That I have not been able to uncover since I've been here. Again, that was a decision made prior to me. However, I feel like it would be very easy to put together an evaluation regarding our attorney, just from some knowledge and previous evaluations I've done from other government attorneys. I'd be happy to take a stab at that and deliver that to all of you if you'd like.
Let's do that.
Okay,
Listen on that.
And just a point of observation from an outside the box purview. Some contracted people work very well if you really interact with them and ask the right questions.
Right.
Versus some people, you can just put them in auto and get the report and know that they're so on top of it. And then the third is the one that does a really good report, but if you don't roll up your sleeves and ask the right questions, they're going to be in auto mode.
So what has been our relationship with respect to this attorney? Are we in auto mode?
No, auto mode, but if you ask them anything, you get an A+ result, but you've got to stay on top of it. And you've had people like that, I'm sure that you're from.
Yep.
So that's what we got. He's good as gold, but unfortunately, you're gonna do this if you want. And that's not you, you is Jennifer.
Yeah.
That's because that would be Jennifer's scope of work, which Bob Gray is gonna point out, where the stakeholders. It's the director's job to handle these people. So that we ask the questions, there's no excuses. Well, I couldn't reach them or this or that.
So I know we don't, none of us have a long, well, you do, but none of the other of us have a long institutional history. Have we, in the last 5 years, had a issue come up that should have been caught by either the CPA or the attorney?
That would be a great Mike question. And ironically, from a league, well, when we talk about SOP, I wanted to add in something that, that I think would be an enhancement in our SOP when it comes to contractual
Okay,
vendors, so it could be, maybe if with the county, I have to use it now, with the county, when they build a school or they build a road or they hire a vendor for a report, engineering thing, what they do is they work with even outside their staff. They already have people that are their hired engineers, they're already on contract.
Sure.
And one of the things we're not doing or never did, and we should be doing, is when we have when we're the SCCF, it's an absolute perfect example. We went ahead and approved something and went ahead with something without any guidance from the consultants that we're paying to know what should be the scope of work, what should be the expected pay, how to handle the billing, so that there's no perfect example of what took place last time. So in other words, when you're building something,
right.
you don't just talk to the developer, the builder
No, of
yourself.
course not.
You go to the construction supervisor. He
Yeah.
says it should cost this much, and they had this. That's not right. This has to be cleaned up. Instead of after the fact, where everyone's pointing fingers. And the perfect example is that, and again, I'm the outside guy, but for me, when there was a proposal between, based on also on the number of nests, that we had a minimum amount of nests and a maximum amount of nests. And the amount of nests were at the minimum, very close to it. Yet our bill was about $8,000 from the maximum cost. And so for me, every warning bell in my head went off and said, well, how do you get these numbers when you did the minimum amount of nests? Where's all that? Then, oh, well, how dare you ask me, and blah, blah, blah. So my point is, we should, in order not to be in that position.
Yes, please.
Is
What do we do?
we have a standard operating procedure that when we do things of this nature, we go to our existing consultants and get a referral on what we should be paying, what is the norm, what is the, what are things that we should find acceptable and not acceptable. So when during the negotiations, it's done fair and square. So going forward, everyone knows what they send and it's acceptable. We can't,
So Jen, do we have a list of existing consultants that can help us on something?
have to,
That's it.
Yeah, so just to comment on what the vice chair stated, I believe that probably what we should have done differently this time and what we should do differently next time is we should turn over that vendor contract to Aptum, because technically they're our construction management company that manages the project. So they have individuals on staff, like Nicole, like, oh God, I can't, who was she, Dan, the environmental person on their staff? That could, what?
Talking about Lauren?
Yes, thank you, Lauren Floyd. Lauren, in hindsight, we should have turned that vendor contract over and let them manage it.
negotiated, they probably would have saved us 25 grand.
Well, and I don't know that necessarily negotiated it, but we should have, in hindsight, we should have had our turtle vendor submit their proposal to Aptum and Aptum bring it to us with their recommendations after they worked it out in
That's
hindsight.
But in other words, we took out our consultant that could have hammered it out correctly from a business negotiation.
I think.
And because,
Yes.
wait a second, because we had a 30-year history with the former SCCF person, a very different mindset. If something was a challenge, oh, let's get together for coffee, let's talk about it. That was not the case then. It was a much different thing. We weren't used to that. So it happened. Moving forward, we can prevent that. And what most people do is you pay your supervisor, they might charge. They might charge just the time it took for the negotiations to bring it to us. It would be like $1,000 or $1.50 or $2,000. But they might say, we will do this, we will charge 4%. But instead of you paying 150, you're probably going to write a check for 90 or 110. So that's a little larger answer than you expected, but we have to be more businesslike when it comes to, because not everyone is like a super nice person and is going to, be Captiva Island style or Sanibel Island. And we saw what took place. So
So do we have a framework for working with an outside consultant on this? And do we have a budget to pay them the $3,000 to $5,000, whatever it is, whatever that number is? So do we have a budget? And do we have a framework to involve other companies like Aptum?
we don't have excuse me for answer, Jim.
Go ahead.
We don't have a budget per se,
Okay.
but if we are embarking upon, we can always do a budget amendment. Because we say, look, this new thing came up, we're gonna spend $200,000 building something, because it's a capital project. Then we figure out ways to say, but to do this right and not cost 300, we have to make sure we do it correctly. And in order to do that, we're gonna have to, we think it might be 200, but let's put our people in front of it to make sure that we are representing the taxpayers' money in a fair manner.
Okay, so we have a budget amendment. Do we have a framework for these kind of arrangements?
It's usually for the bigger deals. I mean, like Jennifer wanted, sometimes when I was chairman, she would call me up and say, oh, we need a drone thing. And everyone wants a fortune. I found something for $4,000. I said, wait, picked up the phone, called a friend of mine. Suddenly it's $2,000.
Okay.
So we didn't need but the thing was, it's just a matter of trying for the bigger projects to have a process in place.
So do we have a process for the hiring of the outside?
Well, we don't have a process in our SOP. And so what I'm saying is we should have an understanding and a philosophy that when it comes to projects of larger nature, that we do it in a style and way, like Jennifer just said, where we put them in front of it to negotiate. And if we like what they negotiated, they tell us this is what we've had. And they spent 5 hours doing it, or 10 hours, or 1 hour, or what have you. And they will give a very clarified presentation as to what we expect to pay, because everyone at this table, I use the SCCF turtle replacement nest process. No one had ever done this before.
Right.
We didn't know what it cost. We assumed that the number sounded right. But now I find out, because I spoke with the person who does all the beach renourishments for the other banks. They've been doing it for 5 years. And they said, yeah, 650. So you don't get that. You don't get that. So none of us, because we didn't know that. So but we have people that could do that. And that's right now, that would be Active. Active has a vast array.
So
of
what's my
resources.
trigger to start a discussion? Okay. You, Richard, the other two characters we bring on board.
Yeah.
Listen, folks, we have a contract. What's my trigger to say to them, okay, now we're gonna get a consulting firm to come in and give us an evaluation? Is it 5,000, 10,000? Is it complexity on the issue? What do you think?
That's a great question. I would just pick a number.
Pick a number.
And
Okay.
I would pick a small number where, because don't forget, a $25,000 job could be just a 15-minute phone call to Apple,
Sure.
or to maybe Dan knows someone at the county that they work with, this killer lawyer that really knows their stuff, and it's $500 and we save $5,000. So
Okay.
I would say we pick a number, even if it's small, and because it could be just a brief thing. It's, did we go through the process? Did we vet it by the experts?
And
Okay.
excuse me, Chair, if you look in our rules of
Yes, ma'am.
procedure, we do have a number that is required, I guess, if you will. And it says anything over $2,500. So at what point would you then want to hire a consultant or someone? I would say, obviously, for our big projects like the beach renourishment, sea level rise, we would obviously hire a construction manager, and then we could make things like all the vendors like Turtles, FDP, all of those could encompass under that project outline and that budget. But we already have the designated amount in our rules of procedure.
If something comes up and we're doing a $5,000 project, I say to the rest of the commissioners, let's discuss it. And then we can vote on it, and then we move ahead and give somebody some
Right.
money to evaluate it. Is that fair?
Well, either that or, with such a small threshold, that could be something that you all as a commission vote on, and you would rely on then your staff to manage something that's small. When it's something large, like a multi-million-dollar project or multi-$100,000 project, that might be something, we'd have to weigh it out. We'd have to look on the return on investment. Is it worth hiring so that we can make sure, these laws are followed, and these, because neither Dan nor I are environmentalists, so we may not know all those laws, but, a consultant would. So I think it has to be, to me anyway, I would recommend that you look at it case by case specific
Of course.
Yeah,
to,
I'll tell you one.
to do the return on investment.
And Jennifer, we're going through what is now called the quiet period. Being involved with the CPD since 1997, so that's 24 years. You are now running the quiet period. What that means is it's going to be administrative. Capital project is done outside of charging people what we charge them. Technically speaking, we are committed to now what is called the administrative period. Now, understood that once we consider what is our agreed upon strategy going to be, it's realistic to expect that there's not going to be any capital projects endeavors going for the next 2 or 3 years. So consequently, things of, these people, other than paving the parking lot or something like that, there's not going to be anything with the nuances, like a total relocation where $650, and I'm thinking in my head, okay, if there's so many nests, it's anywhere from this, and then I found out we signed a bill for 120.
I just want to make sure that we have something in a process so that before we get to that point,
Yeah.
we know how to approach it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've been trying.
And I think when Jim was talking about
Yeah.
case by case,
Yeah.
that's where the commissioners have to come in and make a judgment.
Yeah.
We will discuss that. Good.
Now that we're talking about that,
What?
during your tenure as chairman, you can remember and say, okay, well, then I think we discussed this was in our workshop, I think we're gonna take that to a consultant. But I think there should be a number, like 50 grand,
Okay.
that's what.
And that may be something when we start strategic planning, we may want to have a subcommittee that looks at all the rules of procedure to get them all updated. Because I think they probably need a good update, would be my guess.
Okay, do we need to talk to Mr. Gray?
Is he on the call?
Not yet.
James?
Not yet.
Okay. So can we go back to, again, the performance evaluation process? The process that you outlined, Mr. Sylvia, is that the process you all would recommend that staff take direction on and move forward with?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing is rewriting that word approval. Because you can't approve it if it's not a regular board meeting, so.
Just the redirection.
I would, if I may, since Bob's not on, Bob's gonna explain what everyone's role is. I think once everyone has the directions, then they can go like with Dan and say, this is what Dan's role is. Now, let's see what Dan did. Let's check out the bottom. Then we can write something. We can all give it to John. And then John, you can speak directly with everyone and then make recommendations. We would go from there. That would be my suggestion. I don't think we want to say, I don't know how much to, when you do an evaluation, you want to have a nice chat with someone.
Oh, yeah.
So, because you want to inspire that person to see what the strengths and the weaknesses are and the neutralities are. So consequently, the chairman should do that after looking what all the paperwork and all the other reviews. And then at the meeting after that, say, hey, I think we should do this, we should do that. And then, because there's really two evaluations, one for Jennifer and one for Dan. The contracts are
So we
such,
not evaluate James?
well, no, it's the, well, Jen, there's
Yeah,
only-
I would, again, going back to what Chairman Sylvia said initially. So really the people that your elected body should be reviewing are the ones that report to you, the direct reporting.
That's
well,
So,
yeah.
so I don't know that that would be Dan. I think Dan reports to me, James reports to me, and I would review them. Now, that goes back to if there's any salary adjustments, that's something that would have to be brought forward to the board because it's a contract change, right? We
Right,
want to vote on all the contracts. So I would say it would be your executive director to performance evaluation, their staff. And then if there's a salary adjustment, then that gets brought to the board.
right, and that's what
Okay.
C says though. C says that salary adjustments will be brought to the board.
right.
Yes.
So what's the
Yeah.
issue?
There, I'm just trying to get direction if that's what you all want to do. And if
That's what I
that's,
want to do. I want to move ahead and change the word approval.
okay.
And leave this as executive level, simple as it is. And then when we get to the hard tax, as Renee was saying, we will look at whatever Mr. Gray had proposed, these 27 different items or whatever it is for the executive director, and that's the detail we need to get at, but not A, B, and C. I mean, I would leave it vague and just say, okay,
I'm not comfortable with the chain of command that's being floated here, where we just talked to Jennifer and Jennifer talks to everyone else, and I'll explain why. Jennifer has nothing to do with you. You're busy, number one. Number two is, it's gonna be much better, and I can think of 20 instances alone that Jennifer's at a meeting and Dan is here and the engineers are here, and I say, hey, when is the engineers gonna give the presentation of the sand dunes? And I find out, oh, well, they're gonna come tomorrow and look. I said, okay, well, Dan, what are you doing right now? And who's around? Oh, yeah, the assistant engineers here. Let's get in that thing, because they haven't planned anything. Dan says, yeah, that's true. They haven't got it together. So we get on the buggy, we go up and down, and what you see out there is because of that ride. Because they were just gonna float it, and she's busy doing stuff. Dan has a very important scientific, technical, hands-on role. Jennifer's forte is dealing with the stakeholders, which is anywhere from the governor all the way to Mrs. McGillicuddy down the street. But when it, now, again, this is during a capital projects mode, but now we're in the lobbyist mode. So if you ever dealt with lobbyists?
Yeah.
Okay, right?
Capital.
Okay, so Jennifer hears one. And to me, I want to talk to Dan and hear what he heard. And then I want to call the lobbyists and hear what they have to say. You might get 3 different reviews, and then you might be able to say something that really inspires Jennifer or Dan. But just to be able, they do this in a lot of places. No offense, Jennifer. They want everything to go through them, the directors, so they control everything. And in this particular instance, where we have a large CEPD staff with 2 executive roles, if you are interested in really working your creativity and inspiration and doing all the great things that the CEPD can do, I think it's a huge mistake just to work with one person. And
So
just
then you
trust
want.
them. And I
you
think
could
it's
change-
nothing against you, but it's just what
No,
I.
no, I'm just trying to clarify, because this keeps getting made up as we go along. So what I'm hearing from you, Renee, is you then would prefer to have 2 direct reports, being Daniel's role and mine. And then I no longer have to
No.
manage Daniel?
No, that's exactly what I'm not saying.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying you inferred that if you do any talk, the chairman just deals with the director and no one else, and the director deals with everyone else. And I say, I don't like that, because last year things got done because you might not have been available, and he's here, and he has executive capabilities. So a chairman can talk to his CEO and his CFO. That's how businesses work.
And we wrote an SOP.
That the message
wrote it.
gets to the CFO or the CMO.
Well, again, in my world,
Yes.
we can talk to any, I will talk to anybody I want.
Yes,
That's
and-
the end of
and-
the story.
and
Now,
wait a
again,
minute.
you know,
if-
when-
if-
when again, when the chairman of the committee says, I want to talk to this person, he talks to them, but it is the executive director of the committee who does the reviews of the individuals. And I think what I'm trying to understand is, I think, yes, Jennifer, you have to do the reviews of everybody that reports to you, and everybody does report to you. But we have access to anybody we want at any point.
Absolutely. And the
Well,
way
that's what I'm
that,
saying, I just don't want this Chinese wall, because
no,
Sanibel
not
does it with the manager, and and the county managers like to play that, it's just, I'm
No,
just saying,
no
there's no
Chinese
Chinese
wall.
wall, I'm just,
And I think everybody understands there's no Chinese wall.
and if you recall, back in the beginning, when I first started, I wrote an SOP that you all approved that was very clear. You can absolutely go to any staff member anytime you want. Just make sure that if you're asking them to do
Thank you.
something and you're expecting me to follow up on to make sure that the job's gotten done, like for example, this issue with Dr. Strong, who just reached out to me yesterday after Dan and I have been trying to get a hold of him for 2 months, that you make me aware that you've asked my team to get something done for you. And that's only so that I can hold them accountable.
I didn't see it done. I need to get rid of the word approval and put something else in there. And Bob Gray is on the line.
oh, great.
Okay,
And
great.
I've always said, if I speak to Dan, I say, and make sure you tell Jennifer what we said.
And they do. My team's very good at that.
Except when I
but-
complain about you. That's a joke.
No, they tell me that too.
Well, that's because I'm open and honest. You can always trust people that wear their emotions on their sleeve. It's the smiley, friendly ones that have the knife ready to go in your back, as you well know. I mean, you know a lot of people that I know. We know these people.
So can we move to Bob and
Yes.
unmute him? And before you
Hey,
start
Bob.
speaking, I'm sorry, Jennifer, you would say something?
So I just said, hi, Bob.
Oh, okay. And go ahead, Bob, you can do your presentation. But I do have some comments as we go along. So go ahead.
Hi. So I think that the memo was distributed. distributed a memo to Jennifer. I believe it was distributed with the packet for this meeting. Is that correct? Does everybody have a copy of it? Okay.
Yeah.
I think the memo kind of speaks for itself. Let me just make a little bit of commentary about it. Renee asked me to model what the staffing looked like at CEPD currently, and how many positions there were, what the positions were handling. We agreed that I would exclude the parking lot positions because they're only funded by the TDC grant that you have for those positions. And if the grant goes away, those positions go away. They're not part of the normal TRS annual budget process. So we excluded them, but I took a look at the other 7 positions that are there, and everybody was more than willing to talk with me about their position. Jennifer had transmitted to me prior to my meeting with everybody the current job descriptions for each of these positions, so that I had a starting point to work with. Everybody was more than willing to talk. We had between a 45-minute and an hour interview with everyone. They flushed out for me what they were doing in their positions, and I included all that in the memo that describes the staffing model that's there. It seems to me that, the staffing model you have currently, everybody seems to be doing a lot of work, doing the work that's been assigned to them. There's not a lot of overlap, it appears, so that, my one concern would be cross-training, that, everybody's doing their stuff. They are collaborating with each other on collaborative stuff, but there's not necessarily, hey, if Lindsay won the lottery and walked out, it doesn't seem like anybody would have the bandwidth to just step in and backfill for Lindsay. So everybody seems to have their hands full with their own stuff. I did note in the report that I put together that James was brand new to his position at the time. I think he'd been on board for about 3 weeks. He was still in an orientation period, still coming up the learning curve, still trying to figure out what CEPD was all about. And now I've been involved for almost 20 years. I'm still trying to figure out what CEPD is all about. So I only had about a half-hour interview with him, and again, because he's so new and was learning his job, we weren't able to fully flesh out what he would be doing in the future. I did talk with Jennifer about this model that's currently in place to handle the current workload that CEPD has, and how far into the future this model would support the CEPD, given all of the hot topics that are flying around that I've heard of. And just so you'll know, I haven't been directly involved for a number of months prior to this, but I do go to your website and look at the meeting minutes and any news articles, things of interest that are posted. So I know that you've got, you're talking about coastal resiliency and possibly taking on coastal resiliency for the whole island, not just the beach nourishment on the beach side. We're talking about, as I think I noted under Daniel's thing, about, hey, given the issues that we had with the Economist study, perhaps we need to move to an annual basis of doing that study. There are several other topics that I and further understand what Jennifer said is right. And there's been a long and short-term strategic planning initiative that's been on the table that was deferred until after you closed out your project this summer. And that it's really the results of that strategic planning initiative that are going to inform the staffing model for the future? Are you going to be adding coastal resiliency to your bailiwick? In which case, boy, if historically it took the CEPD 2+ staff members full-time to handle just the beach nourishment side of the island, I don't know what the staffing would be if you're adding coastal resiliency for the bay side to that. If you're taking on other initiatives, I think you have to look at, and you will have to look at once you have that strategic plan in place, how well does the current staffing model fit? What are the things that we're doing now that we wouldn't be doing in the future, so that would free up bandwidth for staff members, current staff members, to handle those future things? And what are the things that we'll be doing in the future that we aren't doing now? So the model is kind of a snapshot of where you are now, but given all the topics I know that are flying around about the future direction of CEPD, I'm expecting that this staffing model will change once you've finished your strategic planning initiative. So again, it seems to me, again, not having been directly involved for a number of months now, you are coming off of one of the most successful projects that I know about for the CEPD. It seems from everything I've been reading and seeing that you did a bang-up job. There was so much more communication this time around and so many fewer problems with residents and businesses. You did it during the summer, so you got an astounding price for this. I mean, I think, I'm not on social media, but there's like a throwback Thursday or something where you should be posting this price, because it seems like it's a real throwback to years and years ago. And I just don't know how you got them to do it so cheap. And in wrapping up that project, it also seems that along the way, not just in wrapping it up, but along the way, it looks like CEPD is being dragged into the 21st century with social media now and the GIS system that allows people to go online and track their apportionment. So I'm expecting that when you finish your long-term planning initiative, the staffing model is going to change, but just like it appears things have been going for the past year, it's going to change for the better, and it looks like CEPD is going to keep going strong.
So Bob, let me ask you some questions.
Sure.
Where we are right now. If you could edit a couple of things in this report. You talk about a CDC grant. Would you spell ahead of time? Usually when someone uses an acronym, they usually spell out what it is, and then they say CDC grant. This is in the third paragraph.
You're right. I'm so sorry. I will spell that out.
In the fifth paragraph, could you give us a little bit of direction in terms of what you think short-term and long-term is? And then you say a plan in the coming months. Given your experience, how many months is it to develop a short and long-term strategic plan? And then I'll go back to Renee's point. Should we work with someone outside who is used to doing these things and give them a couple of bucks to help us provide this outside consultant in terms of what coming months? So if you could edit that, that would be fine. Next page. Question for Jennifer. You got a whole bunch of people here. And I know a couple of them, but are these people actually accessible? Haley
Yes.
Smith, Steve Boutel, Mike Campbell.
Yes.
The Coastal Advisory Committee. Is there a contact person there?
Steve Battelle.
Okay. What about the Tourist Development Council?
That would be, yeah, that's through Lee County, and that's the TDC. It's where we get a lot of our funding and our grant money for the parking lot. to do updates to the parking lot. We're gonna hit them up this year for a new beach buggy.
So, but is there a contact person?
Yeah, Tamara Pygott.
Okay. And then the Southwest Florida Resiliency Compact.
That's Dr. Michael Savarese.
Okay, so I would request from you that in terms of Smith Hotel, the Coastal Advisory, Tourist Development in Southwest Florida, that I would like to have a 15-minute to half an hour phone conference with these people. And I'm welcoming anybody else to attend, but I want to know what these people actually do, what they care about before we get into anything else. That would be useful.
Just to clarify, City of Sanibel should be Holly Smith, not Haley, but anyway, I'm sorry. So just to clarify then, Chairman, you want a meeting individually with these individuals,
Oh,
correct?
yeah, individually. I
Okay.
don't want a group meeting. I want
Okay.
to find out which one of these characters do it.
Okay,
The next page for me, a TDC grant. I think we need to spell out what TDC is. I think I know what it is, but I think we need to spell it out.
Tourist
Sure.
development.
Yeah, we need to spell that out. Under the technical director, and I assume that this is Dan. What is the GIC map? Who came up with it? Do we update it? What do we do with that thing?
The GIS map is the map that I created to show both the apportionment, like the levels of apportionment that we're charging the residents, as well as like the look ahead maps. And it's a system that I'm developing the database to monitor, say, the widths of the beach, any specific erosion spots that are of note. And as well, it's.
So what are your plans on updating this thing?
So when I do
My
my,
interactive, so it's live. You go and touch your house, and you
Right.
see how much you gotta pay or what the difference is. And
How often will you update it?
well, it's gonna, one of the things, I like to have an internal database where I go out when I do my beach monitoring. So I'll take measurements of specific parts of the beach so that we can have our historic records, so that we can know to contact the engineer, hey, the beach has shortened by 15 feet. Is this something we need to pay attention to, or can you guys come out?
Can we own this and sell this? This is worth a lot of money.
I-
Is that can you legally do that?
GIS is owned by.
Well, I know that part, but the software, because you know how we have to buy stuff from other government agencies,
I think it's worth looking into, pal.
Yeah, this is, I mean, just a little quick aside, we had a lunch with Matt Caldwell, he's the property appraiser. And I took Jennifer and Matt and some people from Sanibel and Captiva, James Evans.
Did you get my property appraisal low?
Yeah.
Did you lower it?
No, we
Then
did.
why did you have the lunch?
Well, we didn't, this guy's got a lot of juice. But anyway, long story made short, he was impressed. Everyone's impressed. I'm not trying to butter you up.
I know.
This meeting, but seriously, what he's come up with is serious stuff. And
Good.
the county said it couldn't be done. And he did it. And I think, right, it's something if we can capitalize on, not just from a goodwill perspective, but here we are always looking for money, begging for money, if we have a software program. Or, talk to your lawyers, give me something.
So
But
when
anyway, sorry, I
on a
didn't mean to-
technical
Yes.
director, it says developing a project aftermath critique. Have we done that? Is it still
Something
developing?
that's going to be enveloped. We want to look at, the things that went well with the project, the things that could have went better, so we can be better prepared.
So what's my deadline?
8 years. It's the next one.
Do you think we can get something done by June to finish this critique?
It will probably be later part of the year, before the end of the year.
September.
I'd like to have that, because in my opinion, the construction part of the project phase should be the easiest part, because we should do our diligence before we get to the project, so that everything's already set up, and we just put it out to bid and roll with it, so we don't have access issues, we don't have funding issues, we don't have apportionment issues, it's all taken
Yeah,
care of in
I agree.
advance.
Okay. Under participates in, so where are we on these invasive species? Who defines that thing? Do we work with SCCF on this, or what's the scoop with that?
Invasive species are defined by DEP and FWC, I believe.
That's not
Really
really.
don't have an
our thing.
initiative to it.
Like the Australian pines, well, no, you're right.
That would be the
Actually,
erosion zone.
Australian pines were all removed during the first project. It was sticking in the sand. But that's not around anymore. The Australian pines, you know, when it comes to anything that has to do with resiliency. If, did you put down invasive species here
That's,
somewhere?
that's
Yeah.
been part of the strategic planning discussions. There are some Australian pines starting to pop up through our dam, which could cause erosion.
That are in the
They're
whole
prone to
sentence?
tip
Okay.
over.
Yeah, that's true, tip over, okay, listen.
So what are we doing? Do we have a budget to take out the pines? Do we not have to take out the pines? It's somebody else's responsibility? Where does this come in terms of CEPD?
No, but we
Sorry,
have
can I-
established-
Can I clarify for this? So this
Yeah,
is
please.
what Dan was talking about here was, you know, it's part of, you do have to go through a strategic planning initiative to look at the issues that you just brought up. What do we do about these things? Do we do anything about these things? Who's going to be responsible for doing these things? What Dan was telling me was that you've had some informal discussions about these strategic topics. And that's what he's participated in, these informal strategic planning discussions, the feasibility, what if, should we? I think that's what needs to be brought into your formal strategic planning initiative, so that you can lay out, you know, what are we doing over the next 3 to 8 years?
Okay.
And I recommend those workshops take place. And be, you know, this ASAP, because that should be our #1 priority, our strategy. I don't know, Bob, you work for large organizations. Do you want to? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, do you?
No, please.
Do you have a, when would you recommend we begin our strategic planning? We have to find a little bit more money. We gotta send a check to everybody, but the reality is, or the apportionment part, but the reality is, we're in administrative mode as of right now. So if we're gonna forge ahead with resiliency and strategic planning, I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, that become a priority.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
I jump in here real quick? Can I just, so as you all recall, we laid the groundwork with the students and Dr. Ackerson from UF in the fall. Next Thursday will be the workshop where they present the questions that were asked to the commissioners. And then if you also recall back in, I think, April, I communicated to all of you that we could utilize the same group that we utilized in the city of Cape Coral, because they're used to doing government strategic planning, which is a little bit different than business strategic planning. So if you do not want me to continue in that direction, then I certainly don't have to. But we also did say that after the project was done, we were going to get right on strategic planning. So remember, next week, we're going to hear sort of the update from the interviews that were done last fall from the students. And then the next step would be to actually go out and hire someone that's familiar with government strategic planning.
Okay, so
Please.
my question is, this could be a perfect example. Bob, do you do this also? Bob?
I do strategic planning, yes.
Yeah.
I facilitate strategic planning.
Or you facilitate? Okay, so my question is, if we got a bid from this organization, could we hire
Absolutely.
him
Let's move
to
it.
vet it?
Yeah,
And say, do you want to do this?
Move
and
ahead.
this? Yeah.
no reason not to do this stuff. Let's go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
But I caution you all, I caution us to really look at, to get bids from individuals who are versed in governmental strategic planning. And then Bob can absolutely lead the charge with them and be our consultant on top of the consultant, if you all are comfortable with that. But I would really strongly recommend we look at organizations who handle government strategic planning, because it is very, not totally different, but different than just regular business strategic planning.
Okay, Jennifer, come up with 2 or 3 organizations that do it, and let's start the process. Let's not.
Okay. All right, so I am going to let us hear first from the UF students next Thursday. And then next week, tomorrow, I will start putting out feelers to other organizations that handle this. And then hopefully by next Friday, I'll have 3 bids for you all.
Okay, so next question. And we may be caught in the middle of whatever was going on. Under CEPD Administrative Manager, it's you.
That's it.
Whatever happened, all I saw was an email that somehow we don't do the mobile parking thing. Also, that meeting was canceled. What's the story behind that?
That was just because there wasn't gonna be enough commissioners that could attend that time.
Okay.
So therefore, we felt like it'd be better to postpone it where everyone could be there. That way the information could be presented all at once. I've actually talked with the mobile parking person, Park Mobile, and she's ready on board to do a workshop whenever we are. We just gotta set it up and let her know.
So do we have any rough estimate of what we're talking about in terms of money?
It'll pretty much from the proposal that I was given, it pretty much almost costs us nothing out of pocket.
Huh.
There's a 35 cent per transaction fee, but we pass that on to the consumer. So the consumer pays the $40 for parking, they pay $40.35.
So would this or would this not fall under Renee's, let's have an outside consultant review it kind of process? What do you think?
Well, yeah, but actually the bigger,
Go ahead.
but it's actually to deal with the fact that the TDC gives us the money that pays to people to basically tell people where to park. And, it's a lot of money. I mean, we're spending a fortune between the porta potty thing and the other thing, but we're not spending it. The TDC is spending it, but the money that they're using is the money that came from Captiva in the first place. So it's a very vicious circle. It is a classic case of money burn I've ever witnessed in my life. I mean, what can 2 guys possibly do all day? Other than tell a well, yeah, we could park, or I don't know. I mean, I'm not there. I don't know what goes down. All I know is there's a lot of, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, are there any risks? The way you describe it, I'm wondering, are there any risks in doing this process? When
Well-
people start asking, where the hell is the money going?
no, because the TDC, no, people are, because the CEPD is doing it, as Bob said, we did, we killed it this last beach enlargement. We saved a lot of money, we built the biggest beach enlargement ever. The dilemma that I personally see is, and we'll hear it at the workshop, James, is that they're gonna explain to us, when people come in, they pay, and when they leave, there's a sensor, and it automatically goes on their credit card. So I just want to enforce that. Does there need to be an enforcer? But the biggest question is, so the TDC says, oh, well, great, you built a couple of toilets, you don't need the 300,000 a year for the 2 staff people and the toilet people, so we'll just take that money back. So we have to be careful. We're wasting people's
I
money.
know.
But since they're not giving us anything else in that respect, we have to designate something that we can sell to them and say, you, that 300 grand you're giving us, you have to give it for this now, which kind of is Jennifer's job. And it's our inspiration. And it's also maybe Dan comes up with ideas, James, or someone comes up with ideas, because that is the sword of Damocles that hangs above us.
Okay.
And that's not the answer you expected, but that's the real answer.
Okay, Jennifer, let me ask you, on the CEPD administrative assistant, going back to Renee's question, the second point is performs payroll generation processing. So is that basically putting together the numbers so the CPA can say yes or no?
So you're talking about the payroll piece?
It says performs payroll generation processing.
Yes, so that's
That's
through
through-
ADP. That's through ADP. So what Lindsay has done, she was just trained about a month ago to do this. So she started about a month ago. And then what she does is enter in all the hours for ADP and sends it to them for processing.
Okay,
And prior to that, the CPA handled it.
and she's doing this only for the existing staff, is that correct?
Yes.
We're not doing this for any consultants or anything. Okay, so assist with grant paperwork. Are we currently trying to get a grant or what?
So we get a ILA agreements, interlocal agreements from both Lee County for our project as well as from the TDC. So if for some reason we have to FedEx documents with, which is what we've had to do, or if I need assistance getting the backup so that we can submit the grant report, because we're required every quarter to send a grant report to the county. Oftentimes I'll ask Lindsay, hey, can you give me the payroll report from this month, and this month? And so then she'll help me get that paperwork together along with Jason Smith, our CPA.
Okay. A question on terms of roles, and you'll have to explain this to me. It says interfaces with the CEPD lawyer as requested. Do I really want an administrative assistant interacting with my lawyer? Should
Well,
that not be maybe your job or James' job? Is it? Go ahead.
we all interface with Ralph on different things if we need to.
Okay.
You know, I think probably both Lindsay and James and myself, they'll be assisting me as we start rewriting some of these SOPs, and start rewriting our rules of procedure. Because again, I think they're a little bit outdated and we need to add some things. So in that type, the reason that's in there is because in that situation, I will call on both Lindsay and James to assist me with getting information from Ralph as we continue to update, just to make sure we're legal.
Okay. So my last question, on this social media coordinator, and I'm going back to Renee's comment earlier, how are we actually going to measure this stuff?
So unfortunately, I think you missed Laura's last presentation where she actually did a PowerPoint and showed us where we were and how far we've come in the few months that she's been on board. And I've asked Laura to do those presentations for our board once a quarter. So in the next presentation, which I hope you're there, you'll see the growth that we've had, and you can measure it through searches and activity. There's a whole science to it with these social media platforms. And she did a really good job showing us exactly where we were and where we've come. I mean, I know when I started on January 4th of last year, I think we had 170 some odd followers on our Facebook page. And I think we're over 1,000 now in a year. So that's certainly a measurable metric, but she does a very thorough job of explaining that in her presentation. So I have her slated to do another one for us in March. So she's knows that she's looking at the information and getting it together for us now.
So we have two measurable benchmarks, followers and clicks. Is that correct?
There's way more than that. There's followers, there's clicks, there's shares, there's views.
And that's all in the PowerPoint, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm done. Any other questions, comments? Where do we go from here?
I have one comment, if I may, about the strategic planning, because it is so very important to you. I know that you're down 2 positions on your board. I would not take up the strategic planning until you filled the 2 positions on the board, because you need all 5 commissioners to be present, to be participating, to come out of the strategic planning willing to be ambassadors for the contents of the strategic plan, and to be able to, support that in the coming years. You're talking about a multi-year plan, and to transfer that support and knowledge to any future commissioners, if the commissioners who participate in the strategic planning are for any reason giving up their seat at CEPD. So it is important to start it soon, but not until you have the full slate of commissioners on board to participate.
So Bob, we have, let's say we have the full complement of commissioners in February. What's my deadline? How long do you think it's going to take?
I think that you can, so this depends upon the level of participation from the commissioners. If the commissioners only have 1 hour a month to participate in strategic planning, it's gonna take a long time. So I would think, it's going to be meeting intensive. If you're willing to be meeting intensive, and by that I mean if the commissioners are willing to put in 20 to 30 hours a month, you can probably get it done in 2 months.
He's right.
So when I interview these potential commissioners, I will tell them that we are dealing with short and long-term strategic planning, and that's going to require perhaps 10 hours a month to do. Is that fair? And we'll get it done in 6 months.
Yeah, if you want to get it done in 6 months, yeah, then 10 hours a month. But I would kind of, like a master's degree program, they really don't want you to drag it out over 20 years. They want you to finish your master's in 2 to 3 years. I would, for an organization the size of CEPD, I would shoot closer to a 3-month mark to try and get this done.
15 to 20.
Okay, that's what I'll tell them, 15 to 20 hours. Because this is not a glorified, oh, I'm a commissioner kind of thing, and let me have my free hamburger.
Right,
It's not gonna happen.
good.
Okay. So Bob Gray has given his report.
Nice job, Bob.
I've made my comments. Renee, you have any comments?
No, just that it sounds like everyone we create a strategic plan. And like Bob said originally, if we're just gonna collect people's taxes, we don't need 2 people here.
That's right.
But if we're going to embark on, like we've had for 35 years, but if we're going to embark on island resiliency and expanding and being the CEPD 3.0 versus 1.0, which we used to be, then we have to look very carefully at what Bob prepared and see these are the requirements. And I'm very happy to hear that you want to meet all these people. I know 90% of these people for the past 30 years. And and then I think it's very important you get to meet them, look them straight in the eye, and make your own value assessments. And then I'm always available to tell you, because what they say and what they do could be.
Well, you're not getting away free, just because you're not the chair anymore.
Yeah.
So you can forget that one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, be your consigliere.
Yeah, you are going to be.
So, yeah, but yeah, so since we're going in that direction,
Yes, sir.
we're going big, we're not going home. So we're gonna have 2 board members new, and, the ones who are gonna roll up their sleeves will know who we are. And then getting, realistically, we know what we're forming because we know what we need. And how I pitched it prior was basically to say that you have to analyze what you need to get where you want to go. And now we know what we have. And now we, even for we get a 2 for here. We know what we have to work with for a strategic plan so far. And like Bob said, when you develop your strategic plan, you can figure out procedurally and what those elements are. But, we now have here, and also for performance evaluation, a reality level. So, yeah, I'd say we're off to a very good professional start.
So let me, I don't think you were here when I asked the question earlier. And I don't know if we actually covered it in Bob's review. But I know at some point in the past, Mullins had a huge problem with Wangetti, who was not updating something. And I can't remember what it was. It was kind of vague, but there was something that was not getting updated properly for meetings. Do you have any vague recollection of that fiasco and what it was and who's going to take responsibility for that?
You worked with Wangetti.
What was the big issue between him and Mullins? And Mullins said he wasn't getting something updated. And I don't know, maybe it's in the minutes of a meeting sometime last year, but.
Do you remember, Bob?
The problem with Joe Argenti went farther than he wasn't updating one thing. There were many problems with Joe Wagenti. I think one of the big things that he wasn't updating for Mike was any kind of a status report or plan. Because that's, I think one of the big bugaboos that Mike had was, fail to plan, plan to fail. Joe just could never articulate what it was he was working on, what it was he had done, what it was he was going to do next, what the priorities were. So, it was that whole status planning thing that
And is it-
Joe was not good at.
Good call. He's very
So,
sensitive.
and was that addressed in this report for yours, Bob? Did you say, okay, this is what you got to do, or this is what you've done, this is what you do next? These subjects are in this report.
Nope. What I did was I modeled what your staff is doing now, what the positions are now, and what the responsibilities and the tasks are now. Until you go through your strategic planning exercise and determine what CEPD, the organization, is going to be responsible for in the future, what your goals and objectives are, I couldn't really tell you how to structure your organization for the future and what each position should do.
So when I'm asking, Bob, for example, under the technical director, there's a line that says, reviewed economist study, uncovered and addressed major gaps in the study and significantly improved funding levels as a result. Is that something that I would ask the technical director, please give me an update at a meeting and I would expect a response? Or am I going to ask the question and the technical director says, no, I haven't looked at that recently and I have no idea what I'm doing?
I think that given the success you've had, so the tremendous success that you got in terms of increased funding from your technical director reviewing the economist report, I would definitely be asking the technical director to review all economist reports in the future. And if your strategic plan calls for, if you, the commissioners and the staff of CEPD, discuss it and say, you know what, we really need to do an economist study every year or every 2 years instead of this, throwing our funding chances into this one shot every 7 or 8 year deal that we do now, then yes, I would be expecting to see more economist reports, and you want your technical director to look at them.
So Bob, and again, Renee's probably aware of this. My understanding is, and again, this is kind of foggy, that the economist study was done based upon data for an odd time period. And then we found out that we should have done it in a different time period because of the weather and the season, et cetera, et cetera. So is, again, that kind of an issue that I can bring up and say, okay, where are we on this?
I think, again, the issue that you can bring up is probably an issue for your strategic plan that says, hey, we ran into an issue with the last economist study and the procedures that we were using for doing an economist study. And as it turned out, if we just do a random sample one time every 10 years, we may not get an accurate reflection of what's really going on our beach, because if we're only doing it one day out of every 10
And we
years,
had red tide at the time.
Yeah.
right? So I think it's something you bring up in your long-term strategic planning. And if you guys decide that, hey, it's better for us to do this sampling all along the way and build up to what we're going to submit to our next project,
Right.
then you would know whether you're asking your technical director how often to review the reports. If you decide that you want to do it once a year, then yeah, once a year, you're following up with the technical director. If you decide that, no, you want to keep it the way it is now, then, once every 8 years, you're going to follow up with the technical director.
Well, Bob, ad hoc. Dan, how many times do you think I was on the phone with you and Jennifer going over the reports with finding strong, what'd you come up with, what about this angle? I mean, we're talking 50, 60 phone calls through the course of the year, cleaning up what was really a big issue. And it took, Jennifer's trying to go through her roots. It turns out I had a phone number for Bill Strong that he answered. And Dan took the initiative to actually look at the math, and Mike Mullin suggested, look at his math. Turns out the math was incorrect. So to answer your question, John, you said, what should we do? And we can script it, but as chairman, I just got on the phone and said, what is going on here? And, and what do we do about it? And not just say, okay, well, let me know what it's done, because I knew that was gonna happen. I would just be, I'm relentless. Okay, now that's not gonna work. TDC, forget that. They're gonna, no, I don't like the airport numbers. No, we're gonna do this. That wasn't pretty to hear, but at the end of the day, we got what we needed in advance. And the good part is, maybe Jennifer can tell us, and Bob doesn't have to stick around for it, but apparently we finally got through to Bill Strong. Is he willing to take the brand new numbers and add them too and make a report so that we can add an addendum? Or we need, might as well hear it now, no?
Yeah.
I have to give him a call to set up a time when Dan and I can sit down with him. So that was my plan after this meeting, was just to call, leave him a message, see if he could commit to a meeting with us tomorrow. And then we can review all the information that we sent him over the last few months.
So he just responded that he'll talk, but he doesn't.
Correct.
Oh, great.
Correct.
But I would follow up on Bob's suggestion that somehow we do a more regular survey than once every.
Oh, yeah,
10
Jennifer
years.
was the one who came up with that.
So
by the way,
let's
straight
go
away.
ahead and, do we have a budget for that? Do we have?
Well, we had, in the strategy session, we have to first design what kind of reportage we want to do. For example, Dan, this is becoming a Dan fest, but Dan came up with the concept where the interviewer could use a phone and talk to a person that came at a certain entry site. So a lot of people, they walk a half a mile. So we're just getting paid for the quarter mile. Dan can now show, well, this people half a mile. So we have all these new elements for algorithms, if you will, to point out what the design should be. So I think we have to start from scratch and design. You're an economist.
Yeah, I know.
You're a favorite. I heard you use on Fox News. We distort inside Fox News, but anyway. So the point is, when we have this kind of gray matter firepower, I think now is the time to design in the strategy session a whole new economic model. Maybe not tell Bill Strong about it, because I think that, he's kind of going off into pasture. I mean, he's retiring, but let's get him at least to make a fair assessment based on all the numbers which he committed to. He said, give me the hard numbers, I'll be happy to redo the report. And then we just have to deal with the county that's going to have to agree to probably give us a lot more money. So with that being said, so the point to answer the question.
Yes.
The strategy is, we need a whole new strategy, but like everyone has suggested, to do a whole new design, for the economic survey.
All right.
And Dan is putting in some things here that even the staff can do. So the answer is, it's a whole new, we got the
Well,
jet
the
engine
answer
now.
is, we're gonna give more work to Dan.
Yeah, well, he's already done it. I mean, no, when I say he's already created, he can't wait to take out the jet engine and take out the V4 with
Okay,
the, with the kerosene.
all right.
He's
Fair
built it, it's done, it's ready. Well,
I think we're all
to a
set.
point. Yes, we are.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So, motion.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Well, thank you.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bob.
everybody. Thanks, everybody. Nice meeting with you. If you have any follow-up questions, don't be afraid to ask.
Thank you.
Bye now.
James, can you just work with Bob and get him to fill